1. I'm not even sure how to start this off. But here's a little background. I have had my Instagram for about 5 years. I post pretty simple photos, ones of me. And I'm a photographer and an artist, so a good amount of pictures that I take as well. I don't have a large following on Instagram, so considering this started about 4 years ago, I probably had about 2,000 followers, and most of them were friends, family, or friends of friends. One day I posted a screenshot on my private Instagram of someone random viewing my story. I'm not sure what the context was, but it doesn't really matter. Soon after, a friend of mine pointed out that one of the Instagram accounts that was viewing my story had a profile picture that was a photo of my friend. So I immediately went to their account. When I went on their account, I noticed that all of their pictures were ones screenshotted from my account, and I immediately started freaking out. They went by a kind of Russianized version of my name, and had around 1,000 followers. I was totally baffled. This account didn't last that long and was receiving probably more activity than my own account was. I was confused. But I also knew that was what happened when you have a public Instagram, and some catfish isn't going to ruin my life. So I reported the account and moved on. Soon after, I started getting messages from random Instagram accounts that all seemed to be coming from Russia. They would send me messages and screenshots of different accounts that all seemed to be Russian, of people pretending to be me. I started to panic more, as I knew that not only was it not just one person, but that many people knew about it, and genuinely thought that I was a completely different person than I was. I kept reporting these accounts, and they would mysteriously delete and then show up under new names. But at this point my Instagram account was blocked by pretty much all of the catfish accounts. I logged into a friend's Instagram and noticed tagged photos of this catfish of me. Drawings, many drawings, people drawing me, who they thought was some random Russian girl. There was a Twitter account, a YouTube account, a VK Russian-based social media account, a Facebook account, all under this fake name and using photos of me. I finally got a lot of the accounts deleted and felt relieved. Then, probably around 6 months later, I got another message on Instagram from some other random Russian account, sending me to yet another fake profile pretending to be me. The first thing that stuck out to me was the fact that they had a photo of my mom and I from when I was a baby. A photo that was only available on my mom's Facebook, which is not public. I panicked, reported the account and told all my friends to do the same. Then I got curious and started wondering who these people were that were finding and sending these accounts. I went deep back into my Instagram DMs and found that these accounts were now also catfishes of me. I don't know what part of me thought that it would be a good idea to message them, but I did. I ended up having a very odd conversation with them where they told me that they used photos of me because I looked like them and they were self-conscious. They even said that they show their family photos of me and pretend it's them. One day I tried to log into my Instagram, and it said that someone in Russia had made numerous attempts to change my password. Fucking insane. Basically, I'll save the time and effort and say that this went on for another 3 years, happening randomly about every 6 months. Finally, there was one account made using my own name. I was so furious and had completely given up. A few of my friends messaged them and told them to delete their account. They then DM'd me apologizing in broken English, and then decided that they were going to turn the account into a fan page. Again, fucking weird. I even got to a point where I was considering calling up the producers of Catfish or something. Literally anything. The fan page was running for probably 3 months, but it seems to me that they have deleted it. I still get weird messages from Russian accounts that seem similar to the others, but I don't feel as freaked out by it. This whole situation sucks because I was never directly threatened or put in a situation in which it felt like my life was in serious danger, so I couldn't go to the police. But there were definitely times when I felt like I was being watched too closely for someone who is not famous or anything near it. Not really sure how to end this, because it probably never will end. But to my Russian stalker, let's not meet. 2. My now ex-best friend Jeannie and I used to go out every week to the same pub on a Thursday night. They had a DJ, and that was the go-to since forever. We knew heaps of people who went, and each of us had befriended and met various guys who would sometimes be there too. The place was partially outside, like a beer garden with doors they opened up for the DJ, but the place was overall enclosed. You couldn't lose a friend. I need to mention that part in case you wonder why we left each other in the first place, and why I went off with a stranger. So whenever we'd go there, it wasn't uncommon for us to split and mingle with our other mates, because we knew we'd find each other. Every week something totally random or dramatic would happen, but this week, I'd rather not imagine what could have been. Jeannie and I were chalk and cheese, especially when we were together. When under the influence of alcohol, I knew how to have fun and was very flirty and confident, as most people are when they drink, but I was still always the more responsible, calm voice of reason. Jeannie was not. Jeannie was even wilder. No morals, no limits, and I never knew what I was gonna get with her, as sometimes she would become very aggressive or mean, and say I was just being boring and needed to live a little. This made it very hard for me to keep her in line sometimes. Anyway, Thursday night rolls around and we are having a pretty standard night out. At some point we split and start mingling with our own friends. The place is about to close and we were always very spontaneous about getting home. Sometimes we would Uber, or have a lift ready, or our parents, etc. I am the type to update my mum on where I am, and when I'm leaving somewhere, and she always says to call her if we need a lift, but unfortunately, of course, my phone is dead. On this particular occasion, we didn't think that far ahead. I'm walking around looking for Jeannie and I see her chatting to a bunch of dudes. I walk over and she introduces me to Martin. Tall, athletic build with a beard, pretty common face I would never remember. In fact, all three of them looked basic.
"Hey, this is Martin from the other week. Remember him?"
I say no and turn my attention back to the fact that we have no way of getting home. I'm in no mood for boys right now. I know Jeannie too well, and for me when it's home time. Jeannie proceeds to flirt and brush me off as if we don't need a way home, and attention from these dudes is more important. Martin overhears our issue, asks where we're headed, and says he is headed there too and offers us a lift. For some reason, even though Jeannie knows this guy, I'm feeling a little uneasy about it, and would rather have a minute to explore other options. Jeannie rolls her eyes, tells me to relax, that I'm being unreasonable, and insists it's fine. She knows him, tells me to stop being a baby and let's go. My phone being dead, wanting to avoid any aggression and desperate to go home, I eventually agree. We get in the car along with two other dudes. The ride is going fine until we start directing them to our house. We say, "Take this left." Martin ignores it, and then apologizes, stating that he didn't hear us. "That's okay, you can just go left here." He takes a right. Jeannie and I both pipe up and are like, "Dude, this isn't the way home. Where are you taking us?" The boys just laugh and say, "Oh, we're going home to our place. There's heaps of room for you two." We're like, yeah, funny. "No, we are not. Take us home." At this point, I'm freaking out, and we pull up to their house. Unfortunately, the alcohol had really set in, and amongst the panic in the car, I had no idea where we were, but judging by the short car trip, we weren't far from home. We get out of the car and Martin grabs Jeannie, trying to pull her into the house, while another creeper attempts to corner me. The three creepers are surrounding us. I'm making a scene, getting aggressive because they're telling us to be quiet and just come in. I start screaming louder at them to F off. Meanwhile, I'm running around the car trying to get Jeannie out of Martin's grip. She manages to escape, and we run to the other side of the street. How no one bothered to come out of their house amongst the commotion is beyond me. The guys are whisper yelling still for us to come in and start to follow. Jeannie and I sprint down the street and end up at this park. The guys stopped following and we called someone we both knew to take us home. Jeannie often made me feel pretty crap because I always wanted a no bullshit end of the night and didn't care much about guys, which made me boring, but in this instance, if being the only one with a gut feeling was considered boring, I am proud to be boring. Who knows what their intentions were, but Martin and his maniacs? Let's not meet again. 3. This happened years ago when I was 19. I'm now in my mid-20s. I still remember this very clearly because of how creeped out I was. Back then I was living 600 plus miles away from my parents in a different state. Even though there was a distance, my mom and I still talked on the phone at least twice a week, and we were still really close. So when we found out her cancer was back, I didn't think twice about dropping everything to drive down to see her. A plane ticket would be too expensive, and I had a 10-year-old Toyota that might have been a bit beat up, but still got me from A to B cheaply and quietly. My parents weren't thrilled at the idea of me driving the 11 hours by myself, but my mind was made up, so they offered me a deal. I would stop at a rest stop every 2 to 3 hours and stretch my legs and call them, and in exchange for this courtesy, they would pay for my gas. If I didn't call within the 3-hour window, though, they would assume I'd been in an accident and call me repeatedly, interrupting the audiobook or podcast they knew I would have on. I accepted the deal. And that's why I was at this particular rest stop at 2:45 a.m. This was actually one of the nicer stops, well lit, multiple vending machines that didn't have any huge cages around them, the payphone wasn't broken, and it looked clean. There were a couple of cars there with people sleeping in them. I still had 15 minutes before I had to check in with my parents. I got out of my car and stretched, and then almost jumped out of my skin when I heard a man's voice right behind me. "Miss, can I ask you a favor?" I turned around and he's leaning against my car. I have no idea how he got there so fast. I didn't see him when I parked, but there he was, uncomfortably close to me. He looked like he's in his 40s. He didn't look dirty or twitchy. He was too close, but his body language didn't scream threatening. And even though I was 19 years old, barely over 5 feet, and at that point in my life 110 pounds soaking wet, and even though I had already binged a lot of true crime media, I knew the dangers of a girl my age alone at night with an out-of-state license plate. My dumbass asked what he needs. He told me that he accidentally locked his keys and his phone in his truck, and could he just borrow my phone real quick to call his friend? It'll just take a second and it would really help him out. And I almost handed him my phone. I was reaching into my pocket to hand it to him with a Pollyanna "no problem," and then I looked at his face. Like I said, this rest stop was surprisingly well lit, and this guy looked really normal except for his eyes. He had dead shark eyes. You know what I'm talking about. It's the Ted Bundy, Dick Cheney, actress in a Glade commercial who is trying to convince us she's in love with a dumbass who doesn't know how air freshener works eyes. They're smiling, but the eyes are vacant and creepy and staring way too hard. I got that feeling, that runaway feeling. I knew immediately not to hand this guy my only way to call for help. So I put on my best customer service smile and told him, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, but I don't have a charger. And I need to save all my battery for the tracking app my parents have on my phone. And I need that juice to call my parents, which I actually have to do right now, but good luck." And I turned and walked about 20 feet away, and he doesn't leave. He was still just leaning against my car watching me, and now I don't know what to do. I didn't want to leave him alone with my car because he creeped me out, and he has serial killer face. So going to the bathroom is out. But I also wanted to get away from him, prove I'm not going to help, and maybe he'll leave. I could technically get into the car, but I would have to get really close to him, unless I crawled over my passenger side seat and he's not moving. So I did the first thing that popped to mind. I called my dad. And my dad, for the first time that night, didn't pick up the phone. When I heard his voicemail, I glanced back. The guy still hadn't moved. He's still just staring at me. So I faked a phone conversation with my dad. I angled my body so that the guy couldn't see that I had hung up the phone, and loudly said that I should be home in about 30 minutes, when in reality I was still at least 4 hours away. I mentioned exactly where I was. I reassured this fake caller that this was a good rest stop with plenty of lighting and a couple of visible security cameras. The guy still hadn't moved, and I'm running out of steam on this fake conversation. In the years since, I've thought of a lot of things I could have said while pretending to talk to my dad, but in that moment, I was beginning to seriously freak out and my mind went blank, so I hung up and didn't know what to do. I had hoped the fake phone call would scare him off, but he was still leaning against my car. I stalled for another couple of minutes. I bought cookies from the vending machine. I walked around a little. At this point, he's been leaning against my car staring at me for at least 10 minutes. I honestly debated waking up one of the men in their parked cars and asking for help. And just the thought of having to wake someone up to help me get into my own goddamn car annoyed me enough that I stopped stalling and headed back to my car. I decided that unless he touched me, I'm just going to pretend he isn't there. He waited until I was unlocking my car door before he started talking to me again. He told me that he really needs to use my phone. He's stranded here unless he can call his friend to bring the spare keys. He's not angry or begging. His voice sounds weirdly friendly, but he's been creepily watching me for way too long while blocking my exit, so I'm not falling for it. I almost pointed out the working payphone just in case I'm wrong about this, and I was being a bitch to a guy who needs help. But then he leaned forward as I was getting in, and I lost all the nerve and slammed the locked door as fast as possible. He didn't move until I started the car and put it in reverse. And then he finally stepped back and let me pull out. I didn't even have my seatbelt on. I was so focused on getting away from him. And then halfway out of the rest stop, my mom called me. My mom, who would freak out if I don't pick up and who was already sick. And I needed to put on my seatbelt. I could still see him in my mirror. He was standing right next to where I was parked with his back to me. He was far enough away that I felt okay parking again to answer my phone, but I kept my engine running and I kept watching him. I don't want my mom to worry, so I told her everything is fine, where I am, my ETA. Now that I was in my locked car away from him, I was beginning to feel like I had overreacted. She scolds me about speeding, and I tune her out because the guy is moving now. As my mom lectures me about road safety, I watch the guy cross to a truck, unlock the door and get in. The keys being locked in no longer seemed to be an issue for him. I watched the truck head back out to the freeway and drive out of sight. I had to pretend to be fine to not upset my mom. I didn't get back onto the road for another 20 minutes. And when I did, I didn't speed. I didn't want to see that truck. I found out years later that the closest city to that rest stop has a major problem with sex trafficking, and that girls who look like they don't live nearby or maybe look like they are living out of their cars tend to be targets. I don't know if that was what was happening, or if he was just trying to scare me into handing over my phone. Either way, creepy guy at the rest stop, let's not meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 381. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. It is currently 6:10 in the AM. I really should be getting to bed, but I'm determined to get as much recording done as I possibly can for the next couple of videos. That way, I'm not expecting any noise from the neighbours or waterworks in the street. I think they're all done for now. But it's better to have the audio at least done, and then it doesn't matter if anybody makes noise. Although I will have to find things to listen to while I'm editing, though. All my favourite podcasts seem to be off because, Kevin Smith isn't doing any right now because he's making a film, which is good because it's a film I want to see. But no podcasts. The other stream I usually listen to while editing on Monday isn't on this week because the guy who does it has got guests in town, which is great, pretty cool. But no stream, but I'll find something. Okay, with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.